we read Armand's book recently before the last season of Interview with a Vampire. And I will say Armand here through Marius's eyes comes off so much more like empathetic and sympathetic than he does in his own book.
Yeah, it's very true. It is very true.
And like the Marius that Lestat paints in Interview with a Vampire, or even the Marius that Armand paints, is more sympathetic and understandable than the one that Marius lays out. Like all of these pretty autistic vampire boys cannot explain themselves very well.
No. And it's, no. It's like they tell you a little too much. You're like, some of that should have been inside thoughts.
And that's when I drowned the cat.
Exactly.
The Articulate Coven is the original, unofficial fan podcast and community for Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, The Vampire Chronicles, The Lives of the Mayfair Witches, and The Immortal Universe from AMC and AMC+. Welcome to The Articulate Coven. We are your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are The Articulate Coven. Ashley, I'm so excited to crap on Marius for a while tonight.
Oh my God. So I've been, this time of reading, I have been swapping back and forth between the audiobook and my Kindle. So I have to stop with the audiobook occasionally because I get so fucking angry. Because something about listening to Roger Rees is like listening to Marius. And I'm just listening to him say these words. I'm like, do you hear your fucking self, sir?
I do not believe that he does hear himself. In fact, he does not.
I have to take breaks from it. I'm like, I gotta read this in my own voice for a little while because you sound like a complete moron, sir.
People who have stumbled into the room, Ashley, are like, who is this Marius guy and what did he do to these two poor little white people? Hi, everybody. We are The Articulate Coven. We are your unofficial fan podcast and community for Anne Rice and her Immortal Universe. That's
even of Marius, even though
even our beloved little ship Marius. We talk about vampires and witches and all the other things that Anne Rice covers. We also have a spinoff podcast, Flan Again, which is about the Mike Flanagan shows and movies. You can check that out. Ashley and her husband Brat are covering Fall of the House of Usher right now. The episode 3 is out for everybody, where they're talking about murder on the Rue Morgue, or in the Rue Morgue.
Yes.
This show, though, we're going to be talking about Blood and Gold, and in particular, we're talking about the third section of the novel, where we're really focusing on Marius and his relationship with Armand. So that's the guy that we're picking on here. If you stumbled into the room, maybe check out some of our other ones as an on-ramp.
Yeah, if you need some insight.
I will say this, if you're here on the third part of our discussion of what is like the 11th novel in the Vampire Chronicles, like I think you're probably pretty inside baseball with us.
Yeah, you probably already know that Marius is insufferable at times. I'm sure you know. And then you love him despite it. So here we all are with our bad taste in men.
Before we throw Marius under the bus for an hour or so, I do want to say a mea culpa on my own part. I got some new, I think I mentioned it in the last episode, I got some new audio equipment from a client. It's a really cool Rodecaster Pro 2. This is the second version of this device. But anyway, fancy knobs and whistles for the audio sounding. I had my settings incorrect last episode and there was a whine in my audio. I noticed it in the edit, but I didn't. I was like, nah, it's not so bad. People won't notice. I didn't listen to the final version though. And boys, it was pretty bad there.
Oh,
yeah, it was a doozy. So anyway, if you stopped listening to our last episode where we talked about Underworld from 2003, go back and check it out now. It's been replaced in all the places, so you won't hear my whine.
You might hear us whine, but you won't hear that particular sound problem.
Oh my goodness,
we might have whined about something during it. Who knows?
We absolutely whined about something. Speaking of, let me pull up this. We got one piece of feedback, like literally just a few minutes ago. I got a notification about this on that episode. Mindy Raftery, one of our patrons, commented on our episode about Underworld. The physics ain't physicking. Mindy said, "Y'all, this is one of my favorite vampire action movies. You should totally do number 2, Underworld Evolution." Amiee Lee from Evanescence also contributed vocal soundscapes to the scene where Celine is battling her sense of loyalty to the Victor faction and her new love. I love some Evanescence. That's as close as I get to this Queen of the Damned soundtrack type stuff.
Evanescence, Amiee Lee is actually from Arkansas. Fun fact.
I think I knew that, actually. Evanescence was one of those that kind of broke for us early, like Better Than Ezra's from NLU. So everybody in Monroe and Ruston in Louisiana knew about Better Than Ezra before
everyone else.
World did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I run into people that went to high school with her and things like that sometimes. It's always very funny when they talk about her.
I don't like it when famous people are from where I'm from, because then it really puts into context how much more they've achieved in their lives in the time that they've been around than I have.
That's very true. Let's not talk about that, Joel. Lord.
I like to think that they're all centuries old immortals that are cheating, like Marius as a painter. See? He's only so good because he's been doing it for 1,000 years. Exactly.
I would be so good at everything if I got to do it for 1,000 years and practice and screw up and practice and screw up. And
right. I almost called this episode Botticelli, Bianca, and the Boy, Ashley, because that's... Okay, it had never occurred to me before, even though I recently read this book. Oh, here's some suggestions for you, dear listener. If you are rereading these books, or if you're reading them for the first time, do not do what Ashley and I are sort of doing for these, where we read a book and then immediately reread it again, basically, for these discussions. All of the flaws of these characters really come to,
they do. They really sing loudly. You're like,
Yeah, it is. I was buying Marius's bullshit so much better the first time I listened to this than the second time.
Yeah, and I read this back in the summer, and then now I'm reading it again, and yeah, it's a lot. And then, like I said, something about Roger Rees's voice, and it's just like listening to Marius you're telling me how fucking stupid you are.
He's so pretentious. He does it so and I mean,
pretentious.
He nails it, and it's pretentious without, Marius isn't putting anything on, right?
No.
He's not putting on airs.
He's pretentious because he's pretentious.
You have to put him in the context of his mortal life. You have to go back and remind yourself who he is.
Roman?
Not just Roman, but he's Roman nobility, except he's illegitimate Roman nobility.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got no responsibilities effectively, right? Or no expectation in society. Yeah. And it turns out he's the smartest one of his whole family anyway. So he exceeds and excels at everything in life. Then this bad paranormal shit happens to him as he's kidnapped by druids and whatnot. Except that all turns out to his benefit, and he's taken under the wing of the queen of the goddamn vampires.
Yeah, he's definitely
you'd be pretentious too, is my point.
Yeah, how can he not be? Everything goes his fucking way. Despite how much he screws things up.
Again and again and again. My sister once complained to my mother that Joel falls backwards into shit and comes up smelling like roses. Yeah. And that is exactly the story of Marius.
Failing forward. I fail forward. Yeah.
Failing ever forward.
Failing ever forward.
He's Roman, but that shit's very British, Ashley.
Failing forward is very British. No offense. You guys know we're right. Colonism, am I right?
Okay, so Marius falls madly in love with Botticelli because he's a better painter than Marius is. That's what effectively it is. It just blows his mind. How is this human capable of something that he can only dimly imitate?
Marius having this rock, it's basically having a crush on David Bowie or something. It's so funny to me. He's like, oh my God, I'm obsessed, following the dude around. You're a fucking obsessed stalker friend. This is not healthy behavior. This gets a restraining order in 2024 is what this gets.
He breaks into the Pope's palaces a few times so that he can copy the painting. Yeah, man, you're full on, this is Stan territory. You're writing him love letters from afar.
Yeah, if he finds out about you, he's gonna tell his friends about you. and they're going to have to keep an eye out. And in this day and age, they would be looking you up online. They would be finding out everything they could find out about you. All of his friends would be like little FBI agents. Who's this guy stalking our painter buddy?
But he won't turn them. He's like, no, I could never, because he won't. He's like, I would cost humanity too much to lose him and his work.
Well, and the other flip side is that he realizes that he's not, like, he decides at some point that he's not even quite worthy enough, because he paints these scary images of fucking devils and things like that. Oh, maybe he's not as good as I thought he was.
See, I think that's Marius. Marius backfills evidence for himself all the time, comes to a conclusion, and then will immediately begin to pile up the evidence in support of his conclusion.
Yes, that is very accurate.
He was fine with the imagery until he decided, I've got to chase myself away from Botticelli. Oh, it's evil. Okay, but then he immediately falls in love with Bianca.
Yes.
Which, again, I hadn't really remembered that Bianca came before Armand.
Yeah.
But that's why I joked about Botticelli, Bianca, and the boy. Armand is a rebound. He even says it specifically when Armand first comes up. Let's see. Hang on. He says, where is it? He says, I had forgotten.
I forgot the language of guilt and recrimination. Was that it?
No, that's later. That's really good, too. Oh, I didn't write. Anyway, he talks about how Armand makes him forget Botticelli, made him forget his obsession with Bianca, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, homie, like, this is literally Romeo going, I don't know how I'm ever going to get over
live without Rosalind. Oh, wait, but soft.
What light from yonder window break? Yeah, exactly. He cannot even focus for more than 30 seconds, but he falls in love with Bianca. And the thing that I like most about this early courtship with Bianca, though, and we're going to talk a lot more about Bianca in the next episode, by the way, spoiler alert, if you're reading the book slowly. But when he falls in love with Bianca, he's fascinated with her. She's so beautiful, and she's got this class and air to her. And here's another thing about Marius. Marius loves someone who really appreciates Marius, right?
Yes,
and Bianca seems to appreciate him appropriately. So that's way up his alley. But it's when he discovers that she's a killer, then he's like, oh, but wait. Yeah.
She's going to really get me.
But then that very same thing, he comes to her not so much later, and he's like, j'accuse. And I'm like, you were turned on by that 20 minutes ago, buddy.
And that is Marius. All of this shit happens over the course of 15 fucking pages. Everything we just described.
Anyway, I like that little courtship with Bianca, and I love that understanding about him, that he is literally disgusted by his own kinks almost to some degree. When he finds that someone has some sort of power over him in any way, he naturally rebels against it, and it's always your fault.
Someone needs to help this man find his community.
Yeah.
I think he'd be doing a lot better for himself if he surrounded himself with people who thought in a similar fashion than he does, and maybe likes the same things he likes. Oh.
I mean, okay, he falls in love with Armand here, and Armand replaces all of those loves in his mind. But the very first time that he hears Armand, it's Armand crying for help to God from bondage. Marius's first impression is he is excited to have someone to save. That's the first thing that draws him to Armand.
Well, and then he realizes that this is someone that he can form into what he wants him to be.
The grooming.
Yeah, not just as a person, turn him into the type of person. I'm going to turn him into the type of person I want him to be, and then I'm going to to do that to turn him to the kind of vampire I want him to be. I'm going to make myself the perfect companion. I'm going to make him younger than me. I'm going to be older, smarter, wiser than he is, so that I don't ever have to have any of the fights I had with Pandora about the things that we would fight about, because we were on equal footing when it came to, you know, our mentalities and our age. I don't have to deal with any of that. Yeah.
He literally, and Ashley, that's the one that blew my mind, is because I'm like, you're saying these things out loud to Thorn, a vampire that you don't know. You're saying these things out loud to a stranger and don't know that you are writing yourself as the villain of your own story.
Yes. And justifying anybody that Armand tells, hey, Marius, this guy, he's a little fucked up. What you're telling him, what you're telling Thorn is proving all of that, you know, like, If Armand wants to say I'm fucked up because of my time with Marius, yeah, you probably are, buddy. That has a lot to do with it. I mean, and then all the time you spent in the fucking catacombs, like, that's not good.
Yeah. His beginning was not auspicious, but absolutely, Armand is the way that he is, and like we've talked about before, Armand's passivity in his actions with the coven, his actions with the theater, his actions with Nicholas, his actions with, you know, everything that he does in his life, he just seems to be just riding the waves around him. But like Marius groomed him literally for 2 years,
and he says
to be that way.
He uses that phrase. He's talking about physically grooming him, like changing his physical appearance. But so if you're fucking using the terminology that we use now to describe fucking creeps that like kids, dude.
It's like the moment in Rocky Horror Picture Show where Frankenfurter like finally unfurls Rocky and he goes, I'm gonna make you a man. Yeah, like Marius is like, could I have one with brown hair, perhaps?
Yeah.
Could I give him some mommy issues?
Yes.
Like,
definitely someone vulnerable who needs help. That's good. I think I found the phrase that you were looking for.
Yes, please.
I found an escape from the love of Botticelli. I had found an escape from the obsession with Bianca and her tantalizing guilt. I had found one whom death and cruelty had already marked. The blood would be the ransom. Yes, all things were resolved in me.
Yes.
Dumbass.
Okay. There's like two phrases there in particular that stood out to me. And you're right. I had that note somewhere down here too. I had found one whom death and cruelty had already marked. Like, you went and found a little broken boy.
A little broken boy.
What are you? And listen, foster care and, you know, rehab from the pound for animals. These are wonderful things that I am glad some people are drawn to and capable of serving. There are people in need after terrible events. But Ashley, there are some people who need to have someone need them. And it is like, I mean, here it also is sexual. So like, of course we demonize it. But like, it doesn't always have to be sexual. It sometimes is just about the power level and about the authority and about the like stringing them along. And it's just, man, it's such a fucked up thing.
It sounds like some relationships that I've been in.
Yes, in fact.
The stringing along and needing to be needed and knowing that someone's going to always be there no matter what fuckery you deal to them.
Yeah, man. But like, I mean, not to take it to midnight mass, but when the doves only stay because you've broken their wings, like, fuck you, man.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful.
Listen, having 4 children, 2 of which are like nearing the time when they will leave my house if they want to, it's scary knowing that you've raised these people that are now allowed to do whatever they want to do, including things that you do not approve of or wouldn't agree with or can't follow them to, et cetera, et cetera. But on the flip side, though, like, I mean, not again to go to the God of it all, but that's the cool thing about free will is like, that's what, when they do something that is wonderful and when they make something great out of their lives, the joy is so much better. If they were on rails, if I just built puppets, it's no fun being
Well,
the marionette, you know?
and that's not the way anything works. Like, you could think that's how
No.
it's going to work, but you're going to find out really quick that that is, in fact, not the way it works. In fact,
Yeah.
Marius will discover that when Armand goes running around with British men later on and gets himself in all kinds of trouble. You know, like, you can't control someone completely. You can't control anyone, no matter how much you impress them, no matter how much they need you, no matter how much whatever. Like, you can't completely control someone.
Well, not in a healthy, balanced relationship, and not in a way that you're going to be able to grow together.
Right.
Let's just talk about for a second the audacity of Marius. He names this boy who already has a fucking name.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that Armand has the whole thing about where his memories are sort of locked to him because of the punishment and the trauma that he's endured. Like, that makes sense. But like, Marius doesn't give him even a day or two of happiness to be like, do you remember anything?
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
He could have read his mind, right? He could have unlocked it like fucking Charles Xavier, but no, he's just like, Amadeo, actually. You look like an Amadeo to me. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's forming him into this version of Armand that he wants. And I think it's really interesting how Armand chooses a different name later, like, he's like,
Yes.
I'm someone else now. And you do, like, the cruelty of this is so insidious because it's wrapped in kindness, and it's wrapped in care, and it's wrapped in safety, and it's wrapped in education. It's wrapped in all the things that you can have that you didn't have before. But all of it's leading to this end goal of me turning you into this version of you that is what I want, that can follow me and go with me through the rest of time.
He even lies to himself about it, though, Ashley. He says, like, several times, maybe I'll let the world find him. Maybe if he succeeds enough, if he shows that he's smart enough, or if he goes to
he's
this
talented
school,
enough,
or
like,
whatever, then maybe I'll let the world take him. And the whole time, even as soon as he's saying it, he's like, of course I won't, though. Or later he's like, but it wasn't Armand's choice anymore. My choice is what mattered, and it had already been made. I'm like, God, like, and again, I just kept thinking, you're telling this story to another person. Ashley, it reminds me, though, of, we read Armand's book recently before the last season of Interview with a Vampire. And I will say, Armand here, through Marius's eyes, comes off so much more like empathetic and sympathetic than he does in his own book.
Yeah, it's very true. It is very true.
And like the Marius that Lestat paints in Interview with a Vampire, or even the Marius that Armand paints, is more sympathetic and understandable than the one that Marius lays out. Like, all of these pretty autistic vampire boys cannot explain themselves very well.
No. And it's, no. It's like they tell you a little too much. You're like, some of that should have been inside thoughts.
And that's when I drowned the cat.
Exactly. Yeah. It's horrifying.
Oh my goodness. All right. Oh, there's a good line in here. He's talking about when he decides first that he's going to turn Armand. He goes, "This would be a child of my power, my immortality, a pupil of all I knew." And I'm like, and again, it like burns my ass. I'm like, you had your soulmate in Pandora, and you ran her out of town and ran her away.
But it's not,
like,
she wasn't those things. She wasn't his pupil. She wasn't, I mean, she was, but she wasn't gonna, once she caught up to him, she wasn't going to stay she's going to be his equal. She's not going to be his lesser, like, that's not the way she operates. It's not with him anyway. Like, that's not the way that she operated when they were together. And that isn't the way she was going to be. That is a woman who did have free will and who did embrace her free will.
Isn't it ironic, don't you think, Alanis, that Pandora is sort of that way with her vampiric son, that we see later in this book. And obviously we've heard some of that story before already, but
it's so strange.
Oh, the first word in this book that it's actually recorded that Armand says to Marius. And it'd be like maybe they've had an exchange before, but it doesn't seem like that Armand has actually said anything out loud to Marius before this. The first time that he speaks to Marius, he says the Russian word for master, which reminds me, and I think we're supposed to think this as book readers in the show, how Armand is hung up on the French word maître.
Oh, that's a very good
French
point.
for master.
Well, and I think he's aware of his situation too. He knew he was being sold, like being sold to someone, and that person is going to be your master, and that is what's next for you. So embracing that and understanding that, even if you don't understand anything else, it's kind of gross. Marius is right here in these early interactions with Armand. Is Devil's minioning him. Like, every bad habit Armand has in fucking life, he picks up from fucking Marius.
So I have this like 2 notes down. I said, Marius makes himself a god in Armand's eyes. He gives him the blood. He saves him from torture and death. He showers him with material wealth. He educates him. He dotes on him. He shows him literally every worldly physical pleasure. Then Marius takes him on a hunt and is surprised when Armand doesn't see any horror in it. Like, he goes out and, that's when he takes, let's get to Bianca. Anyway, like, he paints this picture where Armand can do nothing but worship him.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, you don't see both sides of this? And shames Armand for it.
Right. You're the one that set it up that way, dude. And also, this kid's already seen so much horror in his short life. Like, what you think? You think he worships you. He knows that you drink blood. You think that he's fucking surprised that you're going to drink blood from somebody out there in the world? Fuck off.
And also, like, he finds a scumbucket, which is like a lower class of society, and also he's already shown was a pickpocket or something. Like, this is a criminal.
Right.
Anyway,
we're eating the evildoer.
Okay, but before that though, Marius immediately regrets his freaking experiment with Armand. So like, he sets Amedeo up. He's like, first of all, he tells Amedeo secretly, you are for me. We've got this secret relationship that nobody else knows about, and I'm the only one that matters in your life, et cetera, et cetera. But also, every day go spend it with these boys and get educated and go live life in Venice and et cetera, et cetera.
Have fun. Do the things that the little boys do.
He's so proud of himself until the most obvious thing in the world happens and he meets Bianca. And then immediately Marius is jealous of both Bianca and Armand.
Yeah, on all ends of it, he's jealous. I don't like this at all. She likes you and you like her, and both of you like each other, and who likes me now?
Yes, and it's like they both do, asshole. Like, nothing's changed except these two people who you both find endlessly fascinating happen to find one another fascinating too. Imagine that. Like, yeah, and also, like, you've got a horned up 16-year-old. Maybe he's closer to 17 at this point. So Armand's 15 when he picks him up, and he trains him basically for 2 years. But I'm guessing he meets Bianca pretty early in that span, because Bianca and he know each other quite well by the time that the shit all hits the fan. Anyway, so he gets jealous of both Bianca and Armand. And I love, he then projects the jealousy on, he's like, Armand was very jealous of Bianca and the fact that she likes me,
Yeah.
So what does he respond to all of this? Does he say, hey, everybody, we all love one another and I'm obviously the master here and everything's cool? No, he rubs it in Armand's face. He's like, I got your girl, bitch. She's going to be the woman of my house and throw all my parties. How about that? To which, of course, Bianca's like, oh, Marius.
Oh, yes. Well, and because also that scenario serves them both well. She can dispatch people with her little poison cup at Marius's house just as easily as she can do it at hers, and with less suspicion upon her if anything crazy ever happens. So she's a woman who is not just like, she gets shit done. She's not just like a fawning, beautiful courtesan, she's got shit to do. She's got, shit to take care of. So She's not just a fawning woman who all she spends her time is thinking about Marius and how hot he is and how cute his hot little minion is. Jesus.
I mean, that's what kills me is Bianca apparently does spend quite a lot of time thinking about how cute Armand and Marius are, and yet neither one of them is it enough for. They're both like, oh, but we need you constantly.
Yeah, but they don't want her constantly. The thing is,
No.
that, like,
They want her available. They want her available.
Yes, nailhead it. That is it. That is correct. That is the answer. They want her available constantly.
Marius, we talked about it just a minute ago, but Marius takes Armand and shows him the hunt and is like, see, isn't this terrible? Is this really what you want? And Armand's like, yes, more, please.
Are you
Let's
kidding
do that
me?
again.
Yeah.
So then he goes and takes him to Bianca's house and outs her as a murderer to Armand. Like, what a fucking thing. And also threatens that he's going to cut her throat open and eat her, which obviously he was never going to do in that moment.
It's just, again, it's about demonstrating control. I've got your secrets. I have your secrets. I know everything about you. There are so many ways I can control you.
So many ways I can control you. That's it, man. That is it. That's like the name of his fucking autobiography.
Blood and gold, my ass.
So then they talk him into, they're like, okay, we should go kill all these guys that are holding this shit over Bianca's head. I was forced to be a murderer, which, I mean, she probably was. Bianca does not strike me as one who was real worried about it, morally speaking, though.
No. And also she's gotten quite good at it.
Yes.
Let's be real. She's gotten
I don't think she's going to stop doing it just because her cousins aren't making her do it anymore.
No. Yeah. I mean,
she's just going to make money on it now.
Exactly. Now you can get paid.
But he goes and kills all the bad guys for Bianca, and he's got a really good line in there, which again, I think all this time while I'm so mad at Marius, I'm also thinking about how lovely the language is and how interesting the tale is. Like, this is why we continue to read Anne Rice for stuff like this. He says, don't weep for those who have used you. Bianca is sort of like aghast at the idea that all these people she pointed him in their direction, but at the same time, I did it. I sort of pulled the trigger on that. Whoops. I didn't, I mean, I just finished
my dog on them.
I just finished reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and it's really quite good. There's a audiobook version of it on Audible that Dan Stevens did, the guy who was in Legion on FX. It's really quite good. He's got a interesting delivery for the monster in particular. But Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, weeps and gnashes his teeth and wears the haircloth and the whole 9 yards because several beloved members of his family are killed by the monster. And he's like, I did it. My machinations caused all of these deaths. And in his case, he's right.
100%.
Bianca here is sort of like wringing her hands over it. And Marius is like, don't weep for those who have used you. And Ashley, I mean, you and I are not poisoners, but as we talked about in those relationships where it's need, take, want, like, don't weep for those who have used you.
No, indeed. You should stop. You probably did it way too long. Let me tell you, you definitely did it way too long.
I was a fool for God, and now I would be a fool for you. Here's Armand saying out loud what we've all been saying so far about Marius's training sessions. But this is, and again, when he's surprised about Armand's devotion, I'm like, why? You raised an acolyte.
You did this. You
literally went and found a monk.
And it's what you want. It's what you want. It is. If you act like it's not what you want, you're lying to yourself. It is what you wanted.
But it's insane when you think about the fact that he left Santino hanging out there all these years when he made Santino's perfect fucking prize in Armand. Like, he had built, and look how Santino understands it immediately. Santino doesn't keep him in Rome but for just a few years, and he sends his ass to Paris. He's like, you don't need me. Here's the rules, buddy. Hold him to account.
Go forth and get to it, friend.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And Marius, he's just created his own you know, the thing that he says he wants is actually this thing that's going to come back to bite him for the rest of eternity, effectively.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a guy. What a guy.
What a guy. What a couple. What a couple we have here. God bless.
So, all right, you mentioned him earlier, the English Lord Harlech, which what a fucking terrible name that is.
You get so much more of the story in because fucking Marius is out of town.
Yeah.
You get so much of the story in Armand's book, and it's so it's a really great story. And it's really interesting how the shit hits the fan for Armand, and he ends up poisoned.
I mean, okay, so that's the thing that gets me is in my head, this scene sort of plays out like the scene in it's like a Streetcar Named Desire, where he's out there in the tank top t-shirt going, Stella!
Stellaing out the streets.
Or, you know, it's Say Anything, he's holding up the boombox over his head. But no, he's swinging a poisoned sword. This is very much, if I can't have you, no one will have you.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say, Armand must have some magic parts.
I mean, people
or
do
abilities.
He's got some skills. He's got a skill set. He's been very well trained, Joel. We've established he's been very well trained.
That's a good point.
He's also been training in those streets too, you know?
That's the thing that blows my mind is like, okay, so Marius and you are fucking on a regular basis. And he's sending you to brothels to experience the love of women and the pleasure of boys, as
Plus,
he puts
there's
it.
also times he's secretly hanging out with Bianca, right? He secretly hangs out with Bianca on his own sometimes.
But also, don't you imagine the little cadre of boys at Marius's house are fucking too? They're sleeping in piles and whatnot. Like,
yeah, like
they're screwing around. So my point is, like, when do you have the fucking energy to go find yourself a bad boy English lord? And also,
he's 17, Joel. He's got lots of time and energy to find Dick in town. Come on.
What is it that draws you to Dick that's so dangerous he's swinging a poisoned sword, though? Like, this is not...
You talk about who is your daddy. Your daddy's this guy that eats bad guys and drinks blood. So maybe you've kind of been primed to like people that might have questionable morals. I don't know.
Fair point.
Maybe you've been taught to like the bad guy.
So I do love though that there's this awesome sword fight that basically takes place off screen here.
Yeah.
Like Marius comes back and he's like, it was a great battle.
It was something else, man. Shit hit the fan.
Harlech killed one of the boys, and then Armand confronted him directly. Or Harlech kills, I think, several of the boys, because he says he kills at least a few under as young as 7, I think he said. Which, by the way, what the fuck is Marius doing with 7-year-olds?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Why?
Maybe in ancient Venice, I can make an argument for the 15 and the 17-year-olds, but like not for the 7-year-olds. Marius,
let's just hope that was a separate class.
Yeah, those were just his painter boys, right?
Yeah, we're teaching you language and things.
Yeah, they're teaching them language, all right. Okay. Marius finds Armand, and I thought this was kind of a cool thing. Armand gets all of his memories back on his deathbed. He's laying here dying, waiting for Marius to wake up and come get him, basically. And I mean, I guess it's like because he gets the near-death experience that it all unlocks for him. I don't know. But he tells Marius, he's like, I remember who I am and where I come from and the whole 9 yards. Like,
I remember my dad. I remember my mom.
Notice Marius doesn't stop calling him Amadeo, though.
No. It's like, oh, you had a name then. What's that? Let's talk about that. No. We're not going to go back there. And I mean, truly, it could be trauma that he would like to leave behind, but he doesn't even give him the choice, you know? Like, that's the thing about this whole situation with Armand. Armand's never really given the choice, even down to the blood, you know? Like, he's dying. Here it comes.
Yeah, he's not... I mean... Marius talks a good game, but he does not really ever actually give him a choice. He's decided that this is happening. Now, in his defense, Armand is fucking down for it. Like, he's down for it the whole way. Never once goes, well, will this stop me from going to heaven eventually, Master? Like, do we know for sure how this all works out, ethically speaking? What's the theological ramifications
what
of
are
this,
the ramifications?
Marius?
Absolutely.
None of those questions. Oh, even right here, right before he gives him the blood and turns him, Marius says of Armand, his smile was never innocent, no matter how lovely. And I'm like, that dude's giving you bedroom eyes as he's taking his dying breaths. Marius, right before that, says, I knew that his life was now measured in minutes, and yet his smile was never innocent, no matter how lovely. My goodness gracious. So Marius turns him, and I do like the fact that Marius at this point is like 1,400 years old or something, but he's like, I wasn't sure how to do it, so we just did it over and over and over again all night long, like as much as I absolutely could.
Let's just be sure of it. I also love that he's like, okay, I'm going to tell you everything I know about everything in the sharing of the blood, except for those who must be kept, because you can't worship something more than you worship me. Because that's what happened with Pandora.
That is exactly it. I am in the pantheon. I cannot allow any other gods before me. Marius is just a jealous god. Wow.
Yeah. That's why he doesn't tell Armand.
It's wide open.
It's not like Armand's going to tell anybody. Who's he going to fucking tell?
I mean, that's the thing. He would never have told Santino about the mother and father.
No.
It wouldn't. It wasn't. No.
And you've made him strong enough that no one should be able to get it out of him unless he wants them to. So, like, what's the problem? The problem is you took Pandora down there and she got all excited and was like, "Oh my God," and got all googly eyed for the queen, and you don't want that to happen to another of your sweet lovers.
Have we thought about reinvigorating this whole worship of the queen thing? Like, blood.
That blood worship's pretty good. I had fun with that in Greece.
The Christians will like it. They're fine with it.
They'll be into it. They will not be into it.
Marius says the most prescient thing here in the whole novel, probably. He turns Armand, and they have their first couple of days together, and he says, I feared only one thing in the whole world, that this bliss wouldn't last. You're like, yeah, it's not going to.
Yeah. Spoiler alert!
I will say it lasts a lot longer than I remember it lasting. And I think the way that Armand portrays it, it's a much more, it's a much shorter time period. It's basically he's turned and almost immediately stolen away from his master. But like, they get to live as vampires together for quite a while. And Armand gets to learn a lot of things. Like, Marius even says he's impressed with Armand's powers and his abilities, and it won't be long before Armand can fly, and, et cetera, et cetera.
It's to Armand's benefit when he's telling this story.
Oh, yeah, that it's like I got turned and got stolen.
Look, I just didn't even have time to get used to being a vampire yet. It was so
just
crazy.
A poor little baby vampire.
Yeah,
he was
a
not.
wee one. No,
he was not. He's like, let's go get Bianca, right, Daddy? And Marius is like, what? No, we're not going to turn Bianca. He's like, you go turn her. You go turn her.
Yeah, we're gonna eventually.
Well, but what kills me is Marius is like, no, I would never. And then he takes Armand and basically has a soft threesome with them. Like, you're like, what are you doing? What are you do? You keep telling him that you're not, and she can't be a part of our world, and you're trying not to show her exactly what you are, and yet you're literally. He says, meantime, with my right hand, I reached beneath her skirts and found her sweet naked secrets. Let me tell you, Anne is very prone to. I've found his sex. I found her sex. And I do not care for that at all. Sweet naked secrets I can get behind.
You're like that,
behind sweet. Yeah, and easily move them with my fingers, Ashley.
Oh, well.
All right. All right, Marius.
Marius, get it, Marius. Look, just because we're not going to make her a vampire doesn't mean we're not going to fuck her, Joel.
It's a very good point. I love, too, he's like, puts his hand up her skirt, and then he's immediately like, Kiss her, Armand.
Yeah, go ahead. Get in on that. See, and this
You
isn't
take the other end.
Yeah, this is not normal behavior with your mentor. Just so you know, if you've got a mentor out in the world that's teaching you about the business that they're in, and part of their business becomes threesomes, that's not a mentor anymore. That relationship is not professional. You've passed, gone around a curve to a new world.
The time has come to reassess the nature of our association.
Yes.
Okay, I love Amadeo's homecoming tour. I love the idea that he gets turned into a vampire and he's like, let's go take some gold to my mommy and daddy.
Yeah. He's like, now I can go home. Well, I mean, truly, he didn't really remember anything before that. So now he has an idea of like, I want to go back and see where these things happen. I want to go back and see where I painted. I want to, like where I learned to do these things. And he has this really shitty memory of his father when he was being taken away too. Like, he deserves to have a little bit of closure with some of this,
Man, it's weird though. He says, so he goes and sees his mother first and pretends to be someone else. He realizes that his father's still alive. They go to see him in a tavern and he gives his father some rings and stuff. But then on the way out of town, his mother is there to see him and give him some gifts. But he says of his mother then, the second time, he says, I'm trying to think of how he put it. He says, I loved her, but she didn't matter.
Yeah.
And
that's not my life anymore. This isn't what.
Oof. Well, no, very specifically though, in relation to his father mattered.
Oh,
and he
yes.
did
Oh,
need
yeah,
to have
yeah.
resolution with his father. And he
Yes.
didn't really matter that he had seen his mother again, actually.
I
just
do
like,
remember that now. Yeah.
Boy, maybe Armand was broken way before Marius ever. It wasn't just the sex trafficking and the slave trading. Maybe Armand had some problems as a child, actually.
Yeah, who knows?
Andre and Ruski was not exactly whole, is my point. Having the drunk Ivan as your father might be an issue, I suppose. And then,
I mean,
preparing to be buried as a monk. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But it's cool to me though that the way that it plays out is basically like it's the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future sort of thing. Like he shows up and he's like, ooh, and here's some money. Your son is fine, but I must go. Like, yeah. What do they think when they never see him again after that?
Yeah. They're glad that they have some money.
I guess.
Make a fire at least.
But I mean, like, don't you imagine that those wounds had at least partially... I mean, I know his father was a drunk and was raving because he was sad that Armand was gone. But, like, I don't know, man. I don't think that family goes well after that little bomb that he leaves them behind is all I'm saying.
No, probably not. And I'm sure there's a lot of unanswered questions that come out after someone's had a couple too many drinks at home. Like it's not good there. I love this section that he says Armand, and to me it's like why Armand endures and why he's able to endure even though he's gone through some shit and why he doesn't, I mean, he does go into the fire that once, but there's a bitter cold in me. He said a cold which comes from a distant land and nothing ever really makes it warm. Even the blood did not make it warm. You knew of this cold. You tried 1,000 times to melt it and transform it to something more brilliant, but you never succeeded. It's like, I endure because of this coldness. I am gonna last through the centuries because there is something in me. What is it? There's a great line in The Stand by Stephen King where he's talking about one of his main characters in that story. Someone's talking to him and telling him like you need to get your shit together. There's something wrong with you. And he says there's something about you that's like biting on tin foil. And it's just such a specific, like, ugh, and that kind of put that in my mind. I was like, ooh, that's like the thing about Larry Underwood. Something about you is like biting on tinfoil. And that's like there's something in our mind that's that way, that you're always going to, no matter what happens. It's like what Jenna said about you. You fall backwards into shit and you come up smelling like a rose. It's that same sort of thing. Like you're always going to somehow manage to come through it because of this coldness in you, because there's something in you that isn't I don't know. It's interesting to me.
I saw a reel the other day. I think somebody sent it to me on purpose to hurt my feelings. But it was a comedian's voice over these two ladies enjoying themselves through several clips. But the comedian was saying, "I've never met a Diet Coke drinker who didn't have a hole in their heart, a hole in their heart that aspartame will never fill." It's like, yeah, Armand thinks that Marius is his aspartame, but it's just not ever going to fill that hole.
And he knows,
actually.
like, nope, it's never going to happen.
But it is interesting that, like, I mean, Armand lays it out almost like, I endure but out of spite.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to sit here and be mad all you fuckers are enjoying life.
When I could just get up and put on some clean clothes and have a good time myself. But instead, I'm going to sit here.
Oh, man.
Take a bath, man.
Let's talk about Marius's run-in with the Talamasca here. So this is the first time that he ever meets the Talamasca at all, but it absolutely will not be the last time that they interact. I like the description, a scholar of the paranormal. That's what he sort of picks out of his head from a distance. He's like, I came out of this place and I realized that someone was watching me. A mortal was watching me. And I moved way too fast for him to see me, but he was like...
He was looking.
Yeah, he was waiting for me. You're like, what the shit is this? Anyway, he eventually meets the guy. The guy introduces himself as Raymond Gallant. I love this character. Think about... First of all, I love the idea that the Talamasca is literally just out there. They're like, man, there's too much shit in the world that people don't understand.
Yeah.
And we need somebody to just make a record of it. That's basically what Raymond is saying we do, you know?
Yeah.
And the other big thing that he points out to Marius several times is like, we try to save people from persecution when we can.
Yeah.
Just because the world doesn't understand them, which is like...
Yeah, like women shouldn't be burned as witches. That's not a thing. Like, that's just women.
Precisely.
You know? So if we can fucking keep that from happening, then we will. But other than that, they don't fuck around. They're supposed to stay out of the shit, you know, like they're supposed to be watching and observing and not necessarily meddling.
Yes.
But meddling gets them in trouble all the fucking time, the Talamasca.
Well, to be fair,
for example, the Mayfair witches.
This time doesn't get Raymond in trouble, honestly.
No. This is a fairly innocuous interaction.
Think about the audacity, though, of this kid. He's 20 years old at the time when he first meets Marius. And he's watched him from afar for months. Marius catches him doing it and is like, fuck all the way off. Yeah. And he doesn't. But not only that, he sneaks up on him. And he's like, Mr. Marius, sir.
Psst, psst, psst.
At a dinner party.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's make a scene. But
by
not
the way,
really.
I've been in
Let's
your
just
house.
talk.
I've hung out in your house before without you knowing.
I just feel like this Raymond Gallant character is such an interesting one and could be really compelling to see on screen. And my hope is that the Talamasca series gives us some of this sort of thing.
Me too.
I don't know that we're going to get flashbacks necessarily, but there is no reason that we can't get some of this history expounded upon. Yeah. And the really interesting characters like Raymond, again, like illuminate them for us. Give us more than Anne gave us on the page, because she didn't give us that much.
And they just get dropped, like there's little Talamasca people that just get dropped into these stories every now and again. And they're always so interesting and fun. The characters themselves are always like... If our main characters know about them, then they're important enough to cause something to happen later, you know, like in this case, there's not much meddling, but this is how Marius learns about the Talamasca. You know, this is how Marius knows that this group exists, and that, you know, if he wants to, he can reach out. If he wants to, here's this coin. Here's this coin. You can holler at us and whatever, you know, that's the kind of stuff that makes me so excited about the Talamasca series, because I've always really enjoyed these interactions that happen in the books with that organization. I fucking love it. It's kind of like what I would want to do if I lived in this world. I would want to be in the Talamasca, you know, like I think that would be
100%.
so much fun, you know, and like the idea that it's and we see, I think we've talked about this before, we see this kind of organization in a lot of other like fiction things, you know. You got it kind of in Buffy, you got it in Highlander, there's the Watchers in Highlander.
What are they called in Buffy? Aren't there called Watchers in
They might be Watchers in Buffy too. I can't remember.
Yeah,
It's been a real long time
Watchers.
since I've watched Buffy. But yeah, I mean, like this kind of organization is sort of established in other what is it? OPs,
media.
you know? Yeah. So
yeah, I love the idea that you've got this like secular monk order, basically.
Yeah.
Like they're not organized around a god, they're organized around the physical world
and information and knowledge,
the
like
preternatural world, like very specifically,
the preternatural world, and the pursuit of knowledge. It's just so fucking great to me because I am a hyperfixation nerd, and I want to learn about things all the time and new things all the time. So that's why the Telemask has always really, really appealed to me as a reader.
We talked about it in our discussion of the Pandora novel, but I do also love here in this little glimpse with Raymond. He's like, we're an organization that's very old. We're so old we don't even know about our origin. Do you know about our origin?
Yeah.
He's
Can you tell us about us ourselves? Because
I don't know who the fuck you are. He's like, I've never heard of you. This is the first time hearing of it.
This is brand new information.
How long have you known that vampires existed? And he goes, oh, forever. Didn't I tell you we're old? We're very old.
We're very, very old. I'm young. I'm new, but we're very old.
Oh man, I love that whole section so much.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And it is just reading that got me all pumped for the Talamasca series.
I agree there. And I know that we've complained some that none of the named characters so far that they've announced are characters from the books. But if they're going to go into all these nooks and crannies that the books do not go, then having original characters is an opportunity to not cut out the storylines that are to come, right?
Yes.
They're not changing anything that they might want to do down the road with Aaron or David or whoever.
Yeah, and first season may have certain characters and new characters introduced in the second season. Like, we have no idea how that show is going to be laid out. You know, like, we don't know what time period it's starting in. We don't know anything about it. But this is a really good chance to right some of the wrongs that's been done in the Witching Hour, the Mayfair Witches.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Marius, right after he finally chases out Raymond from Venice, he's like, no, but for real,
but go on, get
fuck off and remind all your other people to never fuck back here again. Yeah. Actually,
give it some time.
But as soon as he does that, in on me. He immediately needs him and cries out for him psychically, and he's like, why am I looking for him? I told him to go and get. Like, I know he left. Marius's house is attacked.
Yeah,
and in fact, attacked at. Here's a perfect example of Marius like overconfidence in himself, but he still can't rationalize that or understand it hundreds of years later. He's telling this story to Thorn, and it still never occurred. He does lament. He's like, oh, how I hated myself that I had never destroyed Santino. But he still doesn't really own up to the fact that he had no idea how many numbers Santino had gathered to himself. Like,
right.
He is overwhelmed in his house very quickly and set aflame himself. And he's like, oh shit. Actually, I'm about to die.
This hurts. Ooh. Ouch.
It's just a very humbling moment. And I like the way that it plays out, honestly. And I've always thought about the tragedy of it for Armand specifically, and for Marius to a lesser degree in other ways. But here it's very much like, you had this coming a little bit, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that something like this is inevitably going to happen anytime he sets himself up and is living as openly as he's living, as he chooses to live here. Like, that's the thing. Like, you're setting yourself up for this. It would happen 1,000 times if you chose to do this 1,000 times, you know, because it happens to him in Pandora, you know, like the same sort of thing. They're attacked a few times in their home. Like, it's happened to you before, bro. Like, the fuck?
But it could never be so bad that I can't get away.
That
it
I
could
could
never
that
be
I
so
couldn't
bad.
handle it. I'm so
Yeah.
strong now. I've drunk from Akasha so many times. I'm so strong now. Surely I can. There's no one that could defeat me. But sheer numbers can set your ass on fire, bro.
Friend, I mean, I think about the queen. I'm like, the ancient blood priests locked the king and queen up in blocks of cement or whatever. Like, they didn't have cement, but you know what I mean? Like, they had them and were using them against the king and queen's will in the ancient past. If they can be taken charge of, my friend, like, of course you can be under some circumstances.
Right. You've got two of the most powerful creatures that have ever lived living in a basement, you know, across town, basically.
I will say, at least he does learn that lesson in the modern day. You know, when we meet him in Queen of the Damned and the Vampire Lestat novels, he's living up in
very
fucking
solitary
Antarctica or whatever. Yeah, he's literally under the ice and nobody knows about his temple.
The Fortress of Solitude.
Turns out to be a bad idea for him too, but for totally different reasons that he could not have expected quite so readily. Although, even when I think about that, I'm like, you had to bring the actual fucking music videos of Lestat down into the chamber too.
Yeah.
Like,
you remember
you had to
what
get him
happened?
cable.
You remember you had to get him cable. Cable. Nothing good comes from having cable in your bedroom.
Friends, I know Thanksgiving is over, but soon Christmas will come and Hanukkah, and you may go visit your parents again. Let me remind you all that there are parental controls on televisions and cable boxes, and you can lock out certain networks that maybe your mom and dad don't need to be watching anymore. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. They won't know.
Keep your own dirty secrets to yourself.
The Comcast man will be very upset, though. I will say that. You're like, look, lady, you're getting Fox. Don't even worry about it. Anyway, I enjoyed, honestly, seeing Marius roasted a little bit and then having to crawl to safety this time and being so sad about the boys as they were taken off into the distance and then across the water and he can't hear them anymore. But I'm like, I mean, again, man, like, fuck you for this
hubris.
We didn't mention
hubris.
But Mayel shows up earlier and he's like, ran into Santino.
Can I get some new clothes? Get ready to Santino. Can I get some clean clothes and a bath, bro?
And Marius is like, oh, you didn't kill him?
Yeah.
You didn't kill him? Like,
he just wants Mayel to do all of his fucking dirty work for him, and it's ridiculous. Like, you treat him like shit, and then expect him to do you favors, which, of course, Mayel treats Marius like shit, and he expects Marius to do him favors, so I don't understand this relationship between these two at all.
Well, okay, so this time I was listening to the audiobook section of this earlier today, as a matter of fact, actually, while we were waiting for my youngest daughter had her first theater audition today. Everybody cross your fingers. Hope that goes well.
We love it.
But while I was there, I was listening to some of this book and Mayel is talking. And it occurred to me when Marius, when they first get together, Mayel literally says out loud, oh, Marius, I can't tell you how excited I am to see you, how thankful I am to see you, how thankful I am that you're still around, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Marius's report of this is like, oh, Marius, I can't tell you how thankful I am to see you.
Right.
And it just struck me how, like, one of my children will come and tell about an interaction with the other child, right? Oh, they were so mean and they hit me twice and said that I was a poo-poo head. And like, perhaps someone called someone a poo-poo head, but perhaps it was not who you are saying said such, you know?
I think you're all assholes.
This time I just thought to myself, maybe Mayel is not such a confrontational dick to Marius as Marius lays it out. He's just in his head decided, I hate that dude.
I love that. He says, will you never cease with your accusations? Am I the author of every evil that ever befell you, Mayel? And so you do despise me, Marius, he said, smiling. I thought you far too clever for such a simple feeling.
I mean, and I get that's, again, I often tell my children, hey, look, you don't have to poke back when it's clear that they're on tilt. You don't have to jam a stick in their eye. That's not the way to get along, in fact.
Oh, he does. He literally warns him Listen to me. You've grown careless. Listen to me, Marius. I don't speak to insult you. You walk with a heavy step among mortals. And that boy is very young.
Boy, Mayel will tell a motherfucker, won't he?
My note on that, yeah, he will. My note on that is all caps, right?
Mayel is like, you were a grown man when I kidnapped you.
Yeah, let's splitting hairs over here. Who's the worst creep?
Okay, I want to leave it here because the recovery that Marius takes here really brings Bianca into the story in a major
absolutely.
way. So we're going to make that our next section that we talk about.
Ugh.
But my big thoughts here moving away, again, like all the things that we kind of hate about Armand, Marius tuned him in that key.
Yes. Yeah. It's very glaring when you're reading it with a thought to how these relationships are. Like, since we decided that's how we were going to approach this reading, like, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm just like so annoyed with Marius, because if you do really, really look at him through the lens of the way he treats others, the way he behaves with others, like, he is a fucking idiot. And he's all woe is me and oh sad is me, but he is the author of his own destiny. He sets himself up for these situations every single time. He is the one who makes the car go, like, it's so obvious that the fuckery in his life has been brought by himself.
Yeah, 100%. He bemoans the loss of Pandora and Armand, and yet you're like, you could have stopped both of them. You had hundreds of years to fix either one or both of those relationships.
Yeah, thousands.
I mean, yeah, in Pandora's case, literally thousands of years that he could have repaired that relationship. And she even gives it, there's like 2 or 3 times they come together and he could have fixed it and he doesn't. Anyway.
Too proud.
I mean, like, we started this story with him realizing that he's Daniel's caretaker. And it's like, oh, you found basically like a hospital patient that you shuffle around your house. As we see with all these relationships, that's all he's wired for. In fact, he needs to be in charge and be the caregiver, or it ain't gonna work long term. In fact, yeah.
No, indeed.
I'm excited for you, especially when we get to the Prince Lestat trilogy, to finally get to see Marius in a slightly different light. The circumstances of that world are so different than where we are right now in these novels that Anne finally finds some new uses for him. He's still an ass in a lot of ways.
Oh, and the thing is, I love Marius. Like, I'm kind of like Lestat about Marius. Like, I find him, I find him very alluring. I find like the way I picture him in my mind is very attractive. Like, I have always, and I really, Pandora is one of my faves. Like, I've always really, really liked Marius. Please do not think because I'm shitting all over him during this reading of this book that I don't love the character. It's just so easy to really, really pick apart his flaws, and it's so funny to do it during his own book.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I think part of it is like what we're really shitting on, quote unquote, is ourselves for falling for a person like this. Like,
absolutely.
We see his flaws laid out, and yet we'll still call him charismatic. We still think to ourselves, yeah, I'd kind of like line up to be one of Marius's pets, as a matter of fact.
Oh, man. I mean, shit. You could do a lot worse for yourself. In this world, you could seriously do a lot worse for yourself.
God, that is so sad, but it's true. All right. So our next episode, folks, is a movie night. We're going to be talking about Voyage of the Demeter. Then actually we're going to have another movie night we're going to do From Dusk Till Dawn, as we give everybody a little holiday break. And then we're going to come back at the end of the month with the next 2-parters where we wrap this book up. We're going to talk about Marius and Bianca, and then we're going to talk about Marius and Akasha. Akasha's not really in the end of this novel that much, but I want to talk about how his relationship with Akasha informs all these other relationships. And I said it earlier, like, the fact that he comes out of the box and wins the booby prize of being brought under the wing of the Queen of the Vampires, like, I think that matters in the story of who Marius is and what he does the rest of the time.
100%.
Yes.
Talk about a chosen one. I'm a chosen one. La-di-da.
Don't fall for the chosen ones, people. All right. Until then, go and do your homework. Watch some movies, folks. These are very good films. In particular, I'm excited to revisit From Dusk Till Dawn.
It's such a
I don't know that I've
time.
ever... So I haven't seen Voyage of the Demeter yet. So that's just going to be a nice first take for me on that cool Dracula on a boat
Yeah,
story.
I've only watched it once, and it's fantastic. I'm excited.
But I've seen From Dusk Till Dawn a lot, but I've never watched it with a critical eye. I've never
haven't
watched
either.
it to
I've
talk
just
about.
watched it for pure trash enjoyment. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm super excited because it is a film with pedigree. Robert Rodriguez is a great director.
Absolutely.
Quentin Tarantino is a great writer, and there are a lot of stars in that movie. And I know for a fact in my memory anyway that first 30 minutes before we get to the bar is like such a compelling crime story in its own way. Anyway, super excited to talk about that one. So go and do your homework and then rejoin us for those 2 episodes. Go and listen to Flan again as Ashley and Brat are covering Follow the House of Usher. Even Ashley, a couple of the comments have been of people. I mentioned this last week. I think somebody was talking about, I tried the first 30 minutes of Follow the House of Usher. It's too spooky for me. It is a little spookier than Midnight Mass.
It is.
But that's the beauty of you and Brat breaking it down. If it's too spooky for you, you can still get all the cool pop culture references and the Poe of it all.
Yeah, because we really are. We're kind of going through each episode pretty fully. So if it's too yuck or too boo for you, we got you. We got you. Plus, we'll let you know when the scary parts are going to happen. So here come the jump scares.
There have been several character names that are specific Poe references that you guys have brought forward already that went totally over my head. And I'm like, I know Edgar Allan Poe. I did not know Poe, it turns out. In fact.
Well, as much as I know Poe, like I still have to do my research for this one because there's so much in it. There's so much in it. But it's so fun. We're having a good time breaking it down. Brat and I are complete idiots, so Joel has to do so much editing for us because we just get completely off track in the midst of it. But we're having a good time.
The only editing I ended up doing, you guys were both coming off of a sick fit, and there was so much coughing in the most recent episode that I had to take out.
I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sick. Like right now I've had tea. I've got fucking sparkling water. I have so much beverage right now.
The two of you, first of all, the two of you looked great. Like it was clear you had dressed up to shoot a little video, I think. But you both looked really nice, and you had these awesome teacups too. But you would several times drink them simultaneously. And I was like, this is really adorable. I hope somebody else other than me appreciates this on camera.
We've been together like 21 years, so that's what you get.
I love it. All right. We'll be back soon with the Voyage of the Demeter and all those other things that we talked about.
Yep.
Until then, we have been your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. Thanks for listening to The Articulate Coven. If you enjoyed the show, check out our groups on Facebook and Discord. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Or find us at articulatecoven.com and wherever you listen to podcasts.